Microphone.
Testing, testing.
Was construction around the art
Oh.
museum? Maybe that's what your
No, I was on the show.
Thank you.
I don't know. He was cute. That just didn't happen for him. Okay, never mind. There's no excuse.
Right.
So Bob, did you recover from the cousin trip?
I'll tell you, I had tension headache for a full day after that, from walking around in the cold wind and then driving home.
Really?
Oh, yeah, the road was horrible.
Oh.
I left probably an hour before everybody else, and it was getting worse.
What,
Did you make it home okay?
Yeah, no, we were fine. Yeah.
You dropped south.
We went south. We didn't run
Yeah.
anything
No, I came
till
back-
later.
I came back on 36, and it was just,
Yeah, it did get that. And then there's nothing more miserable than Pheasant Hunt when it's about 20 degrees and the wind's blowing about 40 miles an hour.
well, and
That 40 now turns into about a minus 10.
yeah, no, it was, I enjoyed it a lot. It was
And no, it was fun.
a proud tradition. I mean, waking up to see him in the city in the bunkhouse was a little,
Yeah.
wasn't so sure about that.
Let's get started, everybody. To call the December meeting to order, please. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the November minutes. I have a motion to approve the minutes.
I would move we approve September's minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
September, was it?
Yeah,
It was,
I think that would be November's minutes,
November.
right? Can I amend my own motion and say replace September with November?
let's go with that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. All right, so the November minutes, can we second that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we moved and seconded the November approval. All in favor, aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes, please. And the next item would be our executive director report, please. Oh, our real executive director. I'm just so used to you doing it.
do we need to do continuances and withdrawals?
We only have one withdrawal today, no continuances.
Okay. Great. Well, then I guess it's to me. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you here in December. A little bit of news from the department. We are in the process of planning for next year on a couple of fronts. We had one of two of our hearings before the Joint Budget Committee last week. This hearing concerned three of our divisions, including Reclamation, Mining, and Safety, the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and the State Land Board, with the Joint Budget Committee. It's an interesting time in that members who are newly elected and not yet seated can come to those hearings, as well as members who were part of the General Assembly last year and may or may not be returning. And so we have this great dance we do where we try to pitch things at the right level for both someone who is new and is learning and someone who's been around and has heard it all before. So that was our hearing last week of the Joint Budget Committee. Next week, we have our hearing before the Joint Agricultural and Natural Resources Committees under the SMART Act, and I can never remember what SMART stands for, but it's basically, we report on our performance plan, performance against some strategic metrics, and then give a little bit of a preview of our legislative and regulatory agenda for the coming year. So that's about a 2-hour hearing. If anyone's interested, it's on the 19th in the mid-afternoon. I think it starts at 1:30. You'll be there. You might have better things to do.
Take a nap.
But this is an important process, truly. I mean, it signals what's to come in the next year, and we get to talk about all the things that we've done and that we're proud of. On that theme of transition with people coming and going in the legislature, I'll give a little bit of a report on the transition into the new administration in January, and that is that Governor-elect Polis has created a number of subcommittees with chairs and members. Director Singletary, thanks for your service on the group that includes the Department of Natural Resources, the Department of Agriculture, and the Colorado Energy Office. So thanks in advance for all the work you're putting into that. Inauguration is on January 7th, 8th, it's Tuesday, with the legislature seated on the Friday before January 4th. So it all gets started right after the new year with new legislature and new administration. Along those lines, I might just note that this this could be my last meeting with the Mine Land Reclamation Board, sitting here as a director. And so I just wanted to take a second and thank every one of you for your service to the people of Colorado, to the governor, to the agency. I've had the privilege of sitting on this board since my time as deputy director. So this goes back, gosh, 5, 6, 7 years. And I'm continually impressed by the degree of attention this board gives to issues that are before it, the respect it shows those who appear here. That includes, the attorneys that come here, but it also just includes folks who are trying to scrape out a living out in the state, in the industry that this board oversees. And I think that this group has always treated them with a great amount of respect and with a goal of doing right by the people of Colorado. So thank you for that. Thanks for your service. Thanks for the privilege of serving with you. I've enjoyed it a great deal. And I'll miss it a lot if this is indeed my last meeting. So we'll see how that all shakes out. We'll know more by the next meeting of this board, I'm certain. At least that's the intention. So with that, happy to take any questions on the things that I've reported on, or any other matters before the department.
I would comment, not knowing the outcome, but I appreciate your vigilance also on this board. I watched you closely, and you didn't have to do that. You did, and I think you've been, a good example on the board, and I appreciate it. In fact, in the whole department, you've been very good.
Thank you.
And I'd like to also add that when I came to see Bob, when I wanted to get on this board, I told him I'd like to represent the industry. And he said, well, if you get on the board, you're not going to be representing the industry. You're going to be there because of industry experience. You're there to adjudicate the law and apply it. So I've never forgotten you. That's what you said, and I hope that that's the way it's worked.
If I could further, that's a great point. I've watched, having been on a couple of boards. Your point being is, Tom, you have a certain background and knowledge, and you do, and you don't represent that industry. You represent the collection of ideas, and the debate we pull from you or the other people puts a stronger, I think, quality on whatever amendments and decisions we make at the end. And sometimes board members think, oh, I've got to represent this, where I came from, and that's not right. We want your knowledge. That's what a board, a public board is to do. So I appreciate your guiding in that, because that's absolutely what. And oftentimes it doesn't end up that way, But
Thanks for that. I mean, I really do think that it leads to better decisions. We need a broad perspective on all of these boards, but yeah, you're appointed for your experience, not to vote in a certain way. So thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
On to our division director.
Morning, Jenny Brannon, Division Director. I'll be brief this morning. It's that time of year, so we're pretty much steady state, business as usual. Just a couple of really quick things. We got out our red line of the rulemaking that will be before you soon. So we're off and running with that, and you'll have a chance to consider that before we're formally before you. Also, we are completing our strategic plan that is different than our department performance plan, and we certainly adhere to that, and that's often of general interest. This is a little weedy and inside baseball. It's kind of really for our own use to gauge our progress on certain things that really the general public probably wouldn't have much interest in. But we're finalizing that, and we're happy to share it with you if you'd like to see it when it's finished. And that's all I have, unless there's questions or comments.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. I don't believe we have a consent agenda today, so with that, let's move into our first enforcement hearing. I'd like to call item number 5. That'll be file number M2003 026, Robert Calder. Could anyone who plans to testify, there we go, thank you, please stand and raise your right hand. And do you swear to tell the truth, please? Thank you. Do you want to do that at the end? Yeah.
Morning.
Morning. I'm Dustin Zappa with Division.
Dustin, can you make sure your mic's on there? Thanks.
You hear me now? Dustin Zappa with the Division. This is an enforcement hearing for the Hope Moore Shaft, file number M 2013-026, operated by Robert Calder and Lachlan LLC. This is a 110-2 permit, which includes 9.9 acres, lies on both private and BLM land. This is an underground gold operation, which also operates as a tourist mine. It's an historic mine. It was previously part of the Leadville Mill permit M 1990-057. BLM approved the plan of operations for this site in July 2014. Division issued our permit number M 2013-026, July 2015, after the financial warranty was posted. Existing financial warranty amount, $32,500, was estimated in 2015. Based on current reclamation requirements and costs, this amount is no longer considered adequate by the division and BLM. The site is located approximately 3 miles east of Leadville, in an area heavily affected by historic mining. As previously stated, the site permit lies on patented land and BLM land. The yellow highlighted area approximately shows the currently affected, disturbed area by the operation. The Hunter Shaft, located on the patented claim, and then the Hope Moore Shaft to the south, set on the BLM parcel. This photo shows the BLM parcel. On it is the Hope Moore Shaft, associated structures, several sheds, and head frame. Photo shows the patented area. On it sets the Hunter Shaft and associated structures. The nature of the violation that we're here for today is the operator has failed to post additional financial warranty within 60 days of the issuance of a surety increase notice. Go through a chronology leading up to today's hearing. On June 26, 2018, the division conducted a joint inspection with BLM at the site. July 10th, 2018, The division issued a surety increase notice, SI1, based on updated reclamation cost estimate. The updated financial warranty amount is $38,132.10, which is an increase of $5,632.10 over the amount currently held by the division. September 8, 2018, the operator failed to post the additional financial warranty within 60 days surety increase notice. On October 18th, 2018, the division mailed reason to believe letter. Applicable statute is CRS 34-32-117, parent 4, parent C, which states the board may, from time to time, for good cause shown, increase or decrease the amount and duration of required financial warranties. And that a financial warrantor shall have 60 days after the date of notice of any such adjustment to fulfill all new requirements. There have been no violations associated with this site. Move on to staff recommendations. Staff recommends the board find a violation of CRS 34-32-117, parent 4, parent C, parent 2, for failure to fulfill new financial warranty requirements in 60 days of a surety increase notice. Staff recommends issuance of a cease and desist order prohibiting any further mining activities, except those activities approved by the division in writing and necessary to comply with the conditions of the board's order to prevent damage to offsite areas or to protect health and safety. Staff recommends the following corrective action. Require the operator to submit additional financial warranty in the amount of $5,632.10 for a total financial warranty amount of $38,132.10 in 60 days of the effective date of the board's order. Civil penalty pursuant to CRS 34-32-124, parent 7. Person who violates any provision of a permit issued under the Colorado Mineland Reclamation Act shall be subject to a civil penalty of not less than $50 per day, nor more than $200 per day for each day of violation which such violation occurs. In this case, there have been 55 days of violation calculated from the date the RTB letter was sent to today's board hearing date. Therefore, the board may assess a civil penalty in the amount of $2,750 to $11,000. The division recommends the board assess a civil penalty in the amount of $2,750. The board may suspend all or a portion of the civil penalty in order to encourage timely compliance with the corrective actions, as well as compliance with the act and rules and regulations. Payment of civil penalties is due within 30 days of the mailing date of the board order. Failure to pay the unsuspended penalties by the due date shall result in the matter being turned over to state collections. This concludes the division's presentation. Unless there's any questions, I'll turn it over to you. I'll explain what led up to the increase in bond. There are several factors. The most significant factor would be when the division approved this application, the reclamation plan submitted to our office called for disposing and demolition of the structures on the BLM parcel within the mine. BLM policy no longer allows for disposal of structures or anything on that property, so the division has had to include some removal costs to local landfill for demolishing structures, removal of structures, as well as costs in general have just gone up, and Several years back, the division reworked our estimating software, which increased some of the costs as well. We now had an effect on the transportation costs, dump fees, things like that. So those costs have been updated accordingly for the site. Questions on that?
And the demolition costs, were those structures on BLM land that required additional demolition?
Yeah. Basically, the site sets on almost evenly on patented and BLM land. This picture shows the BLM parcel. These structures are all on the BLM side. The other half of this permit area is the patented land, and there's another shaft and associated structures there as well. On the private land, these structures will remain post-mining. So Lake County wants to see those stay in place. They have some historic significance. Potentially, structures from the BLM land can be removed at some point to the private land and reconstructed and remain and have some historic value for the county there.
Is the most significant part of the initial bond is to because of the cost of having to take it off the BLM property? I guess I don't understand. Originally, the permit was to remove those structures, right?
What the division initially approved, and which is somewhat common practice, is on some of these sites, is structures are taken apart and they can be disposed of within the mine itself underground and then sealed and buried. BLM will not allow that on their parcel, so we have significant structures on the BLM land, so the operator will need to remove those structures. In the currently held bond, there's not disposal, dump fees, and transportation costs accounted for.
So when did BLM change their policy?
This past season, 2018, is the first time they brought it up to us regarding the site. I think it's been a policy for years. It may not be implemented across all the sites uniformly, but
the timing to remove those structures was not in the permit. In other words, the operator didn't agree in the permit to remove them by a certain time.
well, they agreed to take them apart and demolish them and dispose of them on site
At the end of the permit.
at the end of the permit.
Brubaker. This is Russ Means with the division. About 3 or 4 years ago, we started seeing a trend on lands owned by the Bureau of Land Management as well as Forest Service of doing away with the practice of disposing of these type of structures on site. They started wanting to have the material and stuff hauled off. So on this site, it was brought up here last year, but that trend's been kind of going forward for the last 3 or 4 years at least. They just were having problems and stuff with some of the material not being reclaimed correctly or coming back to haunt them. So they just decided that they wanted it hauled off. So it's a trend that's been going on for the last 3 or 4 years, and we're adjusting as we go through the process. So.
Just one more comment there. In the BLM plan of operations that was approved, was issued after the division approved our reclamation plan. The operator does commit to removing those structures from the site. The division approved the application that was submitted to us calculated the bond on what we had, forwarded that number to BLM, and had it concurrence. And at a later date, BLM approved plan of operations with the reclamation slightly different than what we had approved, estimated bond. Now we're updating the bond based on what it'll cost the state to reclaim the site if need be. There will, at some future date, once the operator sorts out the way he wants to handle this, will likely require a technical revision to get the kind of operations and divisions reclamation plan to match.
Is a BLM plan of operation like a BRMS permit in that it's for the life of the mine? In other words, that as long as he follows the plan of operation, he can continue to mine?
Not typically. They typically have to renew every, I think this one's every 5 years. The operator can comment on that. No, that would be answering that question.
Do we have any other questions? Thank you.
Protocols and everything. Good morning, everybody.
Morning. Please identify yourself.
This has come to spend your time on this.
Sorry, could you just please identify yourself for the record?
Sorry, I'm Robert Calder. I'm owner, operator of the Hopemore Mine and Rockland LLC.
Thank you.
I ran into some serious financial straits in this past year, in the early part of 2017. So it's kind of left me in this position I'm at. I'm sorry I haven't been able to pay this. One thing that I hope you guys can see by the photographs and everything, and I've worked with Dustin for a few years, I take this reclamation very seriously. I believe in taking good care of the property. As you can see, it's very clean. A lot of work that I have been doing as of recent underground. I'll even gob the waste back underground. When I first purchased this property, I had to, of course, redo the permit here. And at that time, NEPA laws had come into effect. Between the time that the prior state reclamation permit had been out and the time that I purchased. So that's a completely different, a horse of a different color. You guys probably know, I think the state is really great. I think you guys work really well with mining companies and promoting mining and helping mining grow. And the federal government has a little bit of a different idea, and they're under the constraints of NEPA laws, which are much more strict. So I had to work plans with BLM it probably took nearly a year in time to get all that cleared up. And we settled out on these ideas. Now, originally the plan was to bury some of the concrete and stuff like that on the property. At the time, originally, the mining company had another claim next door that had a huge subsidence hole. And the idea was to kind of fill that and clean that up. But I didn't acquire that property. I was unable to purchase that property. Another 7-acre claim, private claim next. So now here I am at this point here, and the BLM has decided now, you know, like Russ said, maybe they're just pushing a lot harder now on getting this stuff changed. Nothing left on their properties. A little bit of history about this claim. This claim is actually sitting completely surrounded by probably nearly a quarter-mile circle around it from all private claims. The only unpatented claim in that entire area. And I won't go into the history of what happened, why that's true. It was even back from the early 1900s that occurred. my plan was to actually work with the county somewhat, and the state has allowed me to keep the structures on the Hunter claim. These shafts are connected underground. The mine shut down in the year 2000. Everything was MSHA legal at that time. I work with the state now for running the tour. The Hunter shaft is great property, and the county has been interested in keeping mining structures to help promote the history of the town. As you guys probably know, Lake County is a very historical part of the Colorado mining history, and I feel it's pretty important to keep things there for people to be able to see also. Now, by no means do I have a plan to shut down right now. I do plan on continuing to work the property. I've had an engineering assessment done this last year. Very viable mining property. And I also do the tours in the mine during the summertime, working in the state. It's a great thing for Lake County, for the tourism there and for mining. One of the things that the state or BLM came back to me with right away, there's this $5,600 bond. The state came back, the BLM came back with right away, well, here's your salvage cost on iron. As you guys can see in the pictures, these are collapsible head frames. That's what we call these. This one in particular even came from some uranium mine out in Yerevan. We took it down and built it on this site. Basically can just unbolt it and take it down. Now, BLM came back to me with the option of iron salvage, and they lowered the bond to what they thought was to be about $1,800. And just for an example for you guys, anyway, I have been trying to work with BLM also. I have been down to Canyon City to talk to them and work with them on this situation, and they've been pretty responsive, but haven't gotten back to me on some other ideas. I had to help me to lower this bond. Now, after the state's assessment of salvage costs for iron sales, that brought the bond down to, I think, $1,800, $1,850, and figuring in that the iron would pay for part of the work. Now, Dustin's told me and the state has told me that they are not open. And I think there's reasons there. I wish there wasn't good reasons there, but there are. I think he found that salvage companies change their prices quite often. Salvage companies may give a bid for something and then they close up after a year or two later. So they're not around. It doesn't count up. So I guess that's been hard for you guys to make those assessments. Now, the Hunter buildings, the Lake County commissioners have written me a letter that I've worked with the state to lower some of those bond costs so I can keep those buildings there. Now, my idea is just to take that head frame from the Hopemore shaft, that tall gallows frame you can see in the pictures, and move it over to the Hunter. And as you can see by the pictures that Dustin has here, I could literally almost have a crane. And I noticed you guys have a whole bunch of cranes downtown here. I didn't realize Denver was going up so fast. But you can literally take it by a crane and set it over on the other property. Literally. And I've just recently worked with the Lake County Commissioners, and they have been open to accepting me to do that too, if that's okay with you guys. Saving on that some of that bond cost. But my real plan is if I do cease operations up there, that we have almost kind of like in a way, the National Mining Hall of Fame is there in Lake County in Leadville, and it'd be kind of like a satellite using the real part of the Freestone Lions. I am asking, please don't charge me the penalty because I'm having enough difficulty at present just to come up with $5,600. I'm also asking the possibility of Dustin be able to reassess what the cost would be to be able to move those structures onto the private property and keep that for the county. But again, I will reiterate once more that I do plan on working in that property. I do plan on keeping it open and keeping everything where it is now. I hope I didn't take too much of your time, and I hope I didn't ramble on too much. Have any questions for anybody?
Tell me your mining plan with BLM that's approved. Does that include moving those structures?
It did include removal of the structure.
That's what I
Taking
meant.
them down. Yeah.
And is there a what's the timing on that plan?
It's the same as kind of what the state has a couple of years after cessation of operation. They also want to see work being done also, if possible, remediation work. I have a 9.9 acre permitted area, disturbance area. I have a total of about 21 acres up there, and I'm actually only disturbed probably at maximum about 1.9.
So you're not under any time requirement from BLM to move the structures?
No, it's more kind of like what the guidelines of the state. It was very difficult for me, the NEPA laws and state laws, and I had a little bit of trouble kind of, the old saying, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, kind of working in that fashion, and I think that was before Dustin was actually my perspective. It would follow state guidelines as far as closure.
Comment on that, Dustin, with the division. Statute, state goes by is after a mining ceases or operation ceases, they have 5 years to complete reclamation. BLM typically follows our lead on that.
Other questions?
Dustin, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Would this division be interested at all in the idea of moving the structures over to the patented part of the claim?
Yes, I want to comment on that. So as long as those structures are on BLM property, the state holds some liability. Should the operator not complete reclamation, the state's going to need to have the funds to do so. The division, through a technical revision, could certainly review operators' plans to move those structures to the patented site. But the state still needs some financial assurance to remove those structures. If the operator failed to complete reclamation, the state would not likely go in, move the structures from BLM and reconstruct them on the patented claim. That's just not something that IMP would do. We would need to remove and probably dispose of those at an appropriate facility. Yeah, certainly the operator, if he can remove or transfer some of those properties, the state would adjust the financial warranty accordingly. I want to comment on staff recommendations here. statute spells out, and what the division's typically bound to is a 60-day deadline to post additional financial warranty. The board certainly would have authority to extend that as needed. And the division's open to 6 months or a year or so to come up with that financial warranty increase.
How much time would you have to come up with it?
The more time, obviously, the better. I do, I will tell you all right now that there is a mining company looking to buy me out. That would follow into a succession of operator. That's how that would work. But if there's any way I could be putting money, I have my bond in cash in my local bank at 32.5 right now, up in Leadville Bank. And if you all would allow me to kind of keep putting money in as I can and give me a year's plan, I would greatly appreciate it. I don't know if the state, if Barbara could maybe keep an eye on me putting money into that account to make sure that I am doing that. But it would be at the $5,600. Is that what? Or
56.32. Yes, the division could monitor that if the operator submits documentation that he makes payments, as long as the entire amount is in there by the deadline.
What happens at the mine if there's a cease and desist?
I would clean it up. By no means do I have any, I would never leave it and not follow my bonds that I've signed on.
And I think one of the questions too, would you be able to continue making those payments if you had a cease and desist order placed?
The division, division wanted to comment on that. We typically put that cease and desist order as standard language. The division would certainly be okay with not issuing a cease and desist order on this site.
Okay.
Why would you be willing to do that? Tell me why.
I think there's no risk of further environmental degradation or hazard.
Is that because it's underground?
By issuing a cease and desist order, we're essentially, I guess, tying the operator's hands. Because this also operates as a tourist mine, which can help them comply with the surety increase.
Mr. Brubaker, this is Russ Means with the division again. On a cease and desist order on this, that's just our standard language that goes into the enforcement actions. Certainly, just like other operations before the board where that cease and desist order may create a financial burden, such as shutting them down for their tourist mine or something like that, we're not asking for that. We wouldn't have any objections if he was working doing this tourist mine part of that. That's not the intent of this. The biggest thing here is I think that the division would be better off having the board extend some time for the operator to get his paperwork and stuff in order to get the count, may possibly move this structure off of BLM, as opposed to us trying to monitor payments to a bank. That gets very, very cumbersome. And with 1,500 other permits and stuff, we don't have the authority to be monitoring bank accounts and things. So that makes it very, very difficult. I think we'd be better off allowing more time as opposed to trying to make payments, if you will, and stuff on that. certainly the operator, he's close, I think, on his approvals and stuff from the county to move the structure. It would be in his best interest and stuff to move that sooner than later. And as Dustin pointed out, and that he kind of nailed it, and that is the increase in stuff here. It has to be to remove the structure in case it's not done. So that's the $5,000 and stuff kind of comes into play there. But if the operator can get that structure moved over and dismantled or whatever, then certainly we can reduce that bond. And we're certainly willing to allow that time for him to get that into play.
Well, the cease and desist language says, except those activities approved by the division in writing,
Correct.
necessary, comply with the condition of the board's order. So if we issued a cease and desist, the staff still has the division has the authority to allow the tourist mine thing to go on?
That is correct. What it would do, it would basically put the operation in a box and stuff where we have control. He wouldn't be able to do any new disturbances, those kind of things, but we'd be able to have the authority to approve the activities and stuff on site that would help keep him in his tourist mine active while we're working through this other process.
Well, what are you recommending now?
Well,
Can you give us some leadership on this? It sounds to me like you've got a relationship with this, or with this operator. And you know, what we're trying to do is find something that protects the state of Colorado, and we can get there the quickest and the best way we can. Can you give us some leadership on what you would like us to do? And let's see if we can do that.
Well, what I would suggest, and that is giving the operator 6 months to either post financial warranty as noted, or come in and do a technical revision that allows for the removal of those structures to somewhere else. And under the current rules and the acts, a 110 technical revision has no cost to it. So therefore would not be a financial burden to him in order to get that plan of operation and the division's permit together. And that's not uncommon. Sometimes after we approve a permit and the plan of operations done, there's slight differences, and this is one of them. But I think that if you would, if the board would entertain the idea of allowing 6 months for him to either get the financial warranty squared away or come up with a plan and stuff that calls for the removal of that structure in a certain amount of time, I think that would be to everybody's best interest.
Well, would we get there by taking the written staff recommendation, including the violation of cease and desist order, with the language that says accept those activities that are approved by the division, and require the operator to submit additional financial warranty within 6 months, period?
Yes, I think that would be it. And you could also, on the civil penalty, suspend all of it if you wanted to, if he complies with it by that deadline, so that there's that part of that as well.
I almost think it would be cleaner not to find a violation and give them 6 months to get into compliance pending technical revision. Would that work?
I guess I don't like that because I think it's obvious that there's a violation. I mean, he didn't comply with the rules, which say you got to have the money in 60 days.
That is true. Although I think there are some mitigating circumstances in this case that we should consider.
If I might, that part of the reason we're here and stuff is to get a board order so that there is some leverage to get some compliance. And that's the main reason. We can work certainly within that board order. If we get to 6 months and he's really close, we can come back before the board and ask them to modify the board order. That's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But the original notice was in September, June, in that. And so we already have extended it as far as we can as staff. And that's why we're here today, is because we've extended it as much as we feel comfortable and stuff under the statute and stuff to do that.
Okay.
I guess I would go along with My fellow colleague, I feel like we should put as little constriction on it as long as you guys feel comfortable with that. Because we're going into it, we're going into a season in Leadville that's a little bit chilly.
Correct.
And I don't know, what you can get done in that period of time. I think we need to give him some benefit. And, he's here today. I think he's genuine and he's honest, and the staff's looking for that element that can make this thing. All we want to do is make sure the state of Colorado's protected property. That's all we want to do. That's our job. And so we want to hold you to it, but I also want to make sure we need to give him, I think, a chance to be successful in doing that. So that's why I'm not in favor of a cease and desist.
Okay, staff has no problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah, just comment here. I agree with Russ that there should be a violation, something to base the corrective action on. Certainly okay with leniency on the civil penalty and deadline for posting the additional financial warranty.
Russ, can I ask you, let me see, this is December. Would it be safer to do 9 months?
Given the location in that, I don't think staff has any objection in that to.
I just want to make sense. So I
Yeah,
want you guys to
yeah.
connect it.
I think that, yes, the construction season up there is short. And so certainly if you felt that it would be more prudent to do it through till October 1st or something, the board has done that in the past with sensitive sites like this. The division wouldn't have any issue with that.
Okay.
That way to give him plenty of time and stuff to get his paperwork done over the winter. And then in the summer construction season, try to do something and stuff to reduce the bond or at least get it squared away.
Okay. Do we need to afford for the technical revision in our recommendation here?
I think not. I believe if that's the route we go in the future, it will be cleaner to come back and request a modification to the board order.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not trying to delay the agenda. Would it be safer for one of your legal guys to write us up something real quick that would be satisfactory that we could use for a motion? Would that make sense?
I think you can use the staff recommendation and just change the deadline to.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the
Is
cleanest.
that okay?
Just change it to October 1st or whatever for compliance.
All right. Unless we have any more questions, I'm going to close testimony. We're going to start deliberations. But I think we've mostly gotten through there. Okay. Do you have any more comments between the board here?
Well, I make my same argument again. I think staff recommendation, including the cease and desist order, makes sense to me, allowing the staff, as the wording says, accept those activities approved by the division in writing and necessary to comply with the condition of the board order.
Right.
And I like the idea that it's in writing.
Yeah.
And that the staff's accountable for the deal they make to allow him to do whatever they allow him to do under the cease and desist order.
Okay.
So I would just, my recommendation would be we do the staff order, and where it says within 60 days, we change that to 90 days. Or no, not 90.
October 1st. We can put a date in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
October 1st. I don't have a problem
Until
with that.
October 1st. Okay. And we're comfortable suspending the civil penalty?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Suspend.
pending, suspending.
Pending.
Yeah.
No, I think at this point we've closed testimony.
I don't know whether we
Apologies.
gave him a fair chance, so. Before we closed it.
I'm sorry.
I just don't know whether we gave him a fair chance before we closed it.
Well, I think we can open it to ask a question.
Oh, okay.
Just for him.
Sure. Okay. Go ahead.
On the cease and desist, if I do sell the property here quickly, is that going to block me from doing that? Block me from jeopardize my possible sale or investment. That's what worries me about, saying that I have a cease and desist order, then these investors.
I think the lawyers would have to answer that,
Yeah.
but my interpretation would be the cease and desist order says is there because you haven't paid the additional bond. So all it takes is paying the additional bond and the cease and desist is lifted. So if somebody's interested in buying it, I would think that'd be the answer. Maybe,
Yeah.
uh,
Mr. Brubeck.
Mr. Schultz can tell us. Okay.
The only question I'd bring to that issue would be, would that put him in an unfair negotiation position on the sale of that property by somebody knowing they had a cease and desist on him? Would that be an unfair posture? I think it could be.
In order to do a succession of operator, that the bond would have to be brought up to the current amount
Okay.
no matter what. So that process couldn't move forward. The cease and desist order has the latitude and stuff for us to allow for all sorts of things to happen underneath that, as long as it's in writing and approved by us. So is there potential for that? Well, sure, but on the same token, in that we can't be basing our enforcement action on a potential business deal that we have no idea on. So that makes it a little difficult for the board as well as for the staff. So.
And I think if you'll stay in touch with Dustin and let him know, what you're doing and what's going on, I think that could be helpful. We can always look at this again in 9 months. I mean, in October 1st, but you need to keep Dustin as your newest best friend.
Close discussion again.
Reclosing. Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
No, no. I think it's a good question.
Well, I just think a cease and desist order is very important. Generally, it's the one hammer this board has, or a significant hammer that this board has to require action.
Yes. Yeah. It's something that we've lifted and unlifted in the past to allow operators to comply or force them to comply.
Make your motion.
I move that we find a violation of CRS 34-32-117, Pren 4, Pren C, Roman numeral 2, for failure to fulfill new financial warranty requirement within 60 days of surety increase. That we issue a cease and desist order prohibiting any further mining activities except those activities approved by the division in writing and necessary to comply with the condition of the board's order to prevent damage to off-site areas or to protect health and safety. Under corrective actions, require the operator submit additional financial warranty in the amount of $5,632.10 for a total financial warranty amount of $38,132.10 by October 1st,
Yeah.
2019. And I recommend a civil penalty of $2,750, all of which to be suspended based on the posting of the full bond amount.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone for your
I'll give this
discussion.
my utmost.
Thank you. And I need to backtrack a little here. Our next item was actually withdrawn, and I need to formally get an approval of our continuances and withdrawals for this morning. So may I please get a approval and a motion for the,
Was it withdrawn because it was paid?
can I get a motion to approve that, please?
Let's see. I make a motion that we approve withdrawal of file number M-2014-016.
Thank you. And a
Ed
second.
Wilson.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, continuance and withdrawals approved. All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 7, please. File number N-1978-331, board action Ed Zabriskie. You plan to testify? If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth? Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Michael Cunningham. I will be representing the division in this public hearing. This is for the Valley Gravel Co. site, file number M1978-331. This matters come before the board today as an administrative appeal of an office decision. The board is being asked to consider the landowner's appeal to the division's decision to deny the operator's request for release of reclamation responsibility at this operation. Valley Gravel Co. site is located in Fremont County. It's denoted by the red star. We're on the western portion of Fremont County. Slide number 3 is an aerial photo. Again, the operation is denoted by the yellow push pin. We'll note that it is located on the east side of the Arkansas River, approximately midway between Howard and Coaldale. Also note that it sits at the base of a mountain range. It's situated on top of an alluvial fan. Brief permit overview. The site operates under a construction materials 110 permit. Permitted for 9.4 acres. The primary commodities mined at the site are sand and gravel. We have a post-mining land use of rangeland, and the division holds a financial warrant in the amount of $5,880. I want to give the board just a little bit of a site description. Mining at this site commenced approximately 20 years prior to permit issuance, so we've had continuous mining at the site for about 60 years. At the time we received the application in 1978, the soils were described as very gravelly, coarse, sandy loam, approximately 4 inches thick. Soil Conservation Service had described the site as very dry and overgrazed. The permit application indicated that there were no available topsoil resources to be salvaged, therefore that was not a requirement of the permit. All of that is just to say that there's some pretty rough conditions to overcome out there with respect to achieving reclamation on the site. I'll go over a brief chronology. There's a more complete chronology in the board's handout. On September 17th of 2018, the division received a request for release from reclamation responsibility. And on September 20th of 2018, the division mailed notice of that release request. Those notices went to the landowner, county commissioners, and the Fremont Conservation District. On October 11th of 2018, the division received an objection letter from Fremont Conservation District, a copy of which has been included in your board packet. In that objection letter, they indicated concerns that the site had not been adequately reclaimed. On October 17th of 2018, the division, accompanied by Fremont Conservation District, performed a release inspection at the site. Following that release inspection on October 17th, 2018, on October 22nd, 2018, we received additional comments from Fremont Conservation District, in which they inquired if we would be able to release the site, provided that the landowner committed to continuing reclamation of the property. We could respond to their comments, and we informed them that that would be outside of our normal process. We would not be able to approve a release where we had a commitment for continued reclamation at a site, which would, in essence, be an acknowledgement that we had not achieved the required reclamation performance standards. And therefore, on October 24th, 2018, the division issued its decision to deny the release request. Following that, on November 9th of 2018, Michael and Kimberly Schaffer, the landowners, submitted a petition for administrative appeal to the division's decision. I just wanted to present a few photos. These were taken during the release inspection. Slide number 8 is a photo situated down in the pit. We're facing north, and you'll note that we have very limited vegetation within our reclaimed area. Some growth, but none of the planted seed grass species were noted out there. Again, just another photo of one of our reclaimed slopes. You'll note very limited vegetation. One last photo on slide number 10. This is the regraded access ramp. See some minor rilling on the top left portion of that, most likely due to having very little vegetation established on these slopes. Some additional inspection observations. Division determined that backfilling and grading had been done in accordance with the reclamation plan. However, the division and Fremont Conservation District both found that vegetation at the site did not meet the applicable performance standards. The landowner had committed to reseeding and possibly irrigating the site after release of the permit. In that inspection report that we issued, the division recommended to the operator that they coordinate with Fremont Conservation District and the landowner to revise that reclamation plan. The reclamation plan that we're currently operating under remains unchanged since 1978. I've mentioned that the site had not met those performance standards. Specifically, Rule 3.1.10 Parent 1 states that in those areas where revegetation is part of the reclamation plan, land shall be revegetated in such a way as to establish a diverse, effective, and long-lasting vegetative cover that's capable of self-regeneration without any further aid from the operator, whether that be amendments, irrigation, or reseeding efforts. One other applicable performance standard that I wanted to point out is Rule 3.1.10 Parent 5, which states to ensure the establishment of a diverse, long-lasting vegetative cover, the operator shall employ appropriate techniques of site preparation and protection, such as mechanical soil conditioning by disking and ripping, mulching, soil amendments, and fertilizers and irrigation. These were not a component of the original 1978 reclamation plan. To summarize, to our knowledge, the site has been seeded just one time, and that occurred in 2016. We found the vegetation does not meet the requirements of Rule 3.1.10 Parent 1. As the reclamation plan has not been revised since 1978. And in reviewing that, I think we could come up with a better plan that would set this operator up for success. The one available option that we've recommended is to work with us in Fremont Conservation District to submit a technical revision to update that reclamation plan, to include some of these additional measures that may help them be more successful out there. Alternately, we could entertain an amendment application whereby we could change the post-mining land use to residential, thereby eliminating any conflict with how the current landowner wishes to use that property and what we're trying to achieve out there. We do have a couple of permitting options that are available for the operator. We'd be more than happy to work with them on either one of those. With that, staff recommends in this matter, the board deny the petition for administrative appeal and affirm the division's decision to deny the release request. Happy to take any questions from the board at this time.
Help me a little bit here. Is this property upstream from the Valley Bridge or downstream?
I am not familiar with that, so I'm not certain. Perhaps the
When they come up, I can ask.
you may be able to answer that question.
What did the property look like before disturbance?
Well, I would imagine it was pretty rough. Are you asking before the permit was issued out there?
Well, what did the pre-mining land look like? What was the vegetation?
I imagine it was pretty sparse. Again, I'm sort of relying on notes from the file, and we had the Soil Conservation Service had an assessment that this was a very dry site and it was overgrazed. So it was some type of rangeland use at that time. But I'm guessing very little vegetation to begin with, or topsoil resource. This site being located on an alluvial fan probably had very little to work with.
This is the first time I remember the soil conservation, or whatever you call it now, the Soil Conservation Service protested a release. Is that normal?
No, it's a little unusual.
They ask a number of questions in this email. Do you have the answers to those questions?
Yeah, I'd have to pull that up, and I failed to include our response back to them, but we did respond to them, and we attempted to address every one of their concerns. I think they were some of what they were asking would we be able to entertain a release that allowed the landowner to perform reclamation, and were we able to do that? Who would ultimately be responsible for that? Would they be responsible? And all we could tell them was that once we release one of our permits, we no longer have jurisdiction over the site. We can't require a landowner to adhere to any commitments that they may have previously made. So we did our best to advise them on our process and how we normally release sites.
Well, one of their questions, what's the criteria we need to follow to check on these permits for any mine in an area? What?
Well, the criteria really it's twofold. It's Rule 3.1.10 Parent 1 in a general sense for reclamation performance standards. And then from there, it's the specific reclamation plan for that site.
But they do that at application, right?
The Soil Conservation Service, or let me
While he's looking at that really quick, Mr. Brubaker, it's not common practice to get comments back and stuff from the local NRCS, but it's not unheard of. There are times and stuff where we have had the local boards come in and provide comments regarding the reclamation or concerns regarding the reclamation. So this is not the first time that it's happened, but it does not regularly occur.
Now, is this NRCS or is this some other entity that's
Fremont Conservation.
This is Fremont.
Fremont Conservation. But either way, they have. It depends on the board and their activities and stuff. Actually, whether some boards are more active than others, so we do occasionally get comments back on that, but that doesn't happen very often.
But
Can I interject something here?
please.
It would be an individual conservation district and its relationship with NRCS, and each district and each NRCS kind of works. They don't all work the same, and it depends on the strength of the conservation district and how closely NRCS, if they're fully staffed, will work. They are kind of the backbone of that conservation district in providing the technical expertise. I think your question is well placed. And the conservation district seems to be having some questions about what its its role is. I would recommend or think about asking that NRCS be involved with this so everyone's on the same page. You're leaving out that technical component, which is the critical aspect in this whole case, because they would be the ones who would determine, example, there's no topsoil. I don't care what you put in it and what you put on the land. If you don't have topsoil, you're not going to grow anything. But NRCS would be the one that could be the one that says technically this is what has to be structured in order for something to grow successfully, and also do an estimate of time. A one-time seeding is just almost likely not to yield a very high return to begin with. But I think what is lacking here is that NRCS component, and I think they ought to be brought in for this thing to be fully decided how. I'm not saying to delay this, but part of the recommendation be that they be brought in and consulted, and they work with the conservation district on what the new landowner wants, as well as what the requirements would be for the one who holds the lease at this time, the mining lease. Is that clear, or have I confused you?
No, we got you. Yep.
Staff certainly
Okay.
appreciates those comments and recommendations, and we would be willing to work with the operator to coordinate with NRCS to get some further technical recommendations for how to best reclaim the site.
Is the agency that comments on an application, is it the local conservation district? That's
Yes,
written
case.
into the law?
That's who we're sending notice to. We don't always get comments at the
Oh, I understand that.
permitting process or during the release. We certainly welcome them, and
But in the application process, there's somebody we have to notify. And that is the conservation districts.
I just note as well that it's not unusual for an operator to have to make more than one attempt when it comes to vegetation, or come in for more than one release request. Sometimes operators nail it the first time, but it's not at all uncommon where we have to work with them to get it to a point where we can release it, and we think that would be appropriate in this situation.
Well, has it been a common practice for the conservation districts to get involved in the final release?
No, it hasn't.
But it can occur.
We notice them.
From the division point of view, but they often do have a comment depending on the strength of that conservation district, depending on the involvement, and usually the strength of the district, whether they will, come and make a comment. I know districts up in my area, sometimes they do comment particularly on mining reclamation. Does that help you, Tom?
Yeah. I'm glad we have a soil conservation district member.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you. Would you like to come forward? Please introduce yourself.
My name is Michael Shaker, current landowner, property in question.
Thank you.
I purchased the property in 2016. The grading work was complete to the state satisfaction when I purchased the property, and that was part of the deal. We thought seeding, I didn't understand this process whatsoever, but we've withheld some of the purchase money for the property until the reclamation was complete. My understanding was that it could take up to 2 years to seed the property and release it. Last year, we didn't have no water. I mean, I usually mow. My property is the only private property that touches this property. Fremont County is on a site and a half. BLM is on a site, and I'm on a site and a half. And I purchased the property. We want to build a small cabin. But more than that, I'm going to disturb more soil. I'm going to disturb it. And we purchased a seed drill so that we can not only seed that property, but we're going to seed our property, and we have done so. But last year, you really didn't get anything. We generally mow our weeds 3 times a year. Last year, we didn't mow at all. I think that's the biggest problem, is lack of water. It's just decomposed granite. We will get grass and we will get vegetation. There is, if you've seen in the picture, the rabbit brush is coming back, and there is a little bit of vegetation. It's going to take time, and I will work on it.
Any questions?
You're not the permittee, right?
I am not. I know him, and he's worked there, and I know he seeded it. I seen him seed it. I know he would like this to end, and so would I. But I will. It's in my best interest. From my house, you can see this property. From no one else's house can you see this property. It's my property. It adjoins mine, and when the weeds grow, they blow over on my property, and I don't want that. So I would like to get in there and move some dirt around, make some changes, get some primary power in, run some water lines, get a septic system in, and put a small house up. But I'm going to disturb more soil doing that. And like I said, I purchased a seed drill so that I can drill seed, dry land pasture seed in, and get this thing going.
Just so I clarify me a little bit, how far upstream are you from the Valley Bridge?
About a mile. We're on County Road 340A, and we're about a mile from upstream.
Picture that. It's pretty dry in through there. So I saw that some comment was made that you were going to replant it and irrigate it or some fashion. I mean,
that was mentioned, but I don't have any irrigation.
That's what I was curious.
I don't have any water.
I know somebody across the river's trying to do something over there, but I thought maybe that might be part of yours. I don't know. I don't know. So you're here. You're not the permittee, but you're kind of, since you're the owner now, you're trying to represent yourself. But permittees, really, if I'm correct, they're the ones that are going to be responsible for getting this done. Isn't that correct?
Until he gets it done, I can't do anything with the property.
Oh.
I'm not getting any younger. I'd like to do something here.
I feel your pain.
But you have a pretty good relationship with that permittee? You have a good relationship with him?
I do.
Okay. And your intention is to use this land for residential?
Yes.
Would you be able to convince the permittee to work with you and NRCS and the division to come up with number one, to be sure the seed mix is adequate for the type of area that you have to deal with, and on the other conservation measures that would be necessary to ensure that you would start having germination of seed and the decline of weeds, which may include spraying. Would you see yourself having any problem with that?
I wouldn't have any problem with the recommendations. I want them helping us out. But I don't want to be bound by this permit and by this reclamation permit. I want that removed so that I can move on and move some dirt, do some excavation, and do the things that I want to do. But yes, I'm happy to have recommendations, get grass growing and not weeds. That's definitely a problem there.
It sounds to me like rather than a revised reclamation plan, what we're really looking at is a revised land use plan. And that would require an amendment. And so there's no way, in my mind, that we can approve the bond release today until some permitting has gone on. So whether that be reclamation or residential, I think we're premature to even consider.
Well, the lawyers could
right.
tell us, but I appreciate you being here, but you're sort of an interested party. You're not the permittee.
That's correct.
And the permittee is the one that we're denying or approving. And so you're saying, well, I'm a neighbor, I'd like for him to go ahead and get released. Problem is, he's the one responsible and he's the one that committed to do what was required in the permit. And he's the only one that can change it.
And I concur. I live about maybe 100 miles downstream on the Arkansas. There was no moisture last year. I hear you, but you're kind of you're in, the permittee is the guy that we have a legal posture with. So I think this is premature. I agree with you.
Sorry. I guess unless we have any additional questions for you or you have any for us, do you have any clarification from the division?
Michael Cunningham with the division. I just offered that staff appreciates we've got some real tough site conditions out there to deal with. Certainly appreciate Mr. Schaefer's desire to start using his own property in a way that he wishes. And with that being said, I think were we to contemplate a technical revision which revised the reclamation plan, whether that's different seed mix or soil amendments, we're still going to be a couple growing seasons out before we'd be able to release this. The shorter path towards release would be an amendment, which changes the post-mining land use. Work with the operator on that. The 110 permit, so we'd be dealing with a 30-day review period. This is something that we could work with them on during the winter months and come up with a point where we're all satisfied that we could turn this property over to Mr. Schaefer so he could continue with construction of his residential.
It's too bad the operator isn't here, because if he's going to change land use, hopefully it doesn't get him outside what county land use regulations are. He doesn't have to go through some kind of county process to change it from whatever if it's a special use permit or whatever. May be simple, I'm just raising the issue.
Agricultural.
With that, hopefully
Good.
there wouldn't be too much.
Yeah.
We'd have to do with the county.
Good.
My only point is the operator's going to have to do that.
Any further questions? And we'll close testimony. Do we have any deliberation between ourselves, or are we ready to make a motion here?
I'll make a motion. I move that with regard to permit number M-1978-331, that we deny the petition for administrative appeal and affirm the division's decision to deny the request for release from further reclamation responsibility.
Okay, thank you. A second?
Second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to lean in here. Yeah. All right. Just put it right in front. Is that better? Okay. All right. Then our next item is enforcement hearing file number M-1982-124. Anthony Miller.
Somebody needs it.
Thank you. And if you plan to testify, could you please stand and raise your right hand? Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth? Thank you.
This is Patrick Lindberg with the division, and this is an enforcement hearing for the Smith Gravel Pit operated by Elk Valley Land and Trust Company Limited, permit number M1982-1. We're here to confirm the board's previous determination that the financial warranty should be forfeited pursuant to CRS 3432-118, parent 3, parent A. A complete chronology has been provided to the board in the handout in front of you. Are there any questions? Questions? I'll move on to the staff's recommendations.
Thank you.
The staff recommends that the board confirm the determination that the warranty should be forfeited in accordance to CRS 3432.5-118, parent 3, parent A, and issue a written findings and conclusions of law to support the decision and issue an order directing affected financial warrantors to immediately deliver to the board all amounts warranted by the applicable financial warranties in accordance with CRS 3432-118, parent 3, parent B.
Thank you. Thanks. Do you have any questions? Okay. Thanks. Unless we have a representative from the operator, I think we can close testimony. Thanks. We want to make a motion here?
I would move that the Vineland Reclamation Board confirm the determination that the financial warranty should be forfeited in accordance with CRS 34-32.5-118, parent 3, parent A, and include the law support its decision and issue an order directing affected financial warrantors to immediately deliver to the board all amounts warranted by applicable financial warranties in accordance with CRS 34-32.5-118, parent 3, parent B.
Thank you. Any a second?
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Our next item on the. Oh, do you want-
Probably should.
Okay. All right. Let's take about a 5-minute break here and come back at about 10:40.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The new AG takes over.
I think.
Same day. Within 60 days. Well, I agree with that. Well, they did. Yeah. I thought it was a mistake. So then I thought about it one night, I was laying in bed at night, and I thought, you know what? It may not be that dumb. Somehow we're gonna have to get those back on.
Yeah. So are you following the CCI hiring process for replacing Chip?
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Sorry, we can
Black
talk about it.
Forest is back.
All right. Okay, we're here.
It's a tough job.
All righty, everyone, let's get started again. We're starting with enforcement hearing, file number M-1999-047, Shane Gales. If you plan to testify, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth? Thank you.
Sarah Scout, the division, we provided the division with a handout that sort of summarizes the actions of for this permit. The operator has requested to request the division's permit reinstate.
Morning, guys.
You're up. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah. I'm Shane Gallus with Dry Creek Gulch Farms. I guess I messed up. I don't know what else to say. There's no excuses. We got it back into compliance, I believe. And I guess I just ask for your reinstatement.
Let's see. I guess my first question, you're comfortable with what you need to do moving forward? Just staying in compliance,
Yeah,
working with the division? Okay. Okay. Do we have any other questions?
I think that's an interesting staff recommendation when it says they do not oppose.
Okay.
Is that the same as recommending reinstatement?
Okay.
Mr. Dawson brought himself back.
Okay.
Yes, in this case, Mr. Halls has brought himself back in compliance with the reporting requirements and paid civil penalty that was assessed, so.
Okay, great.
Just curiosity, where's your pit located?
In Yuma County, just east of Laird, Colorado there.
Okay.
Is there any possible way we could make that go to private on that? Turn it into a private deal? Like get rid of the bond and everything and just turn it to private?
Oh, we close out your permit. That's what you'll be working with the division on.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Okay, any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you both. Close testimony. Do we need any deliberation? Are we ready to make a motion here?
I move in the case of M-1999-047 that we approve the operator's request to reinstate the reclamation permit for the purpose of allowing the operator to complete the reclamation of the site.
Okay.
Second.
Great. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
You guys have a Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
You too. Thank you.
I hadn't.
Okay. Great. Our next action is
I think so.
file number M-2002-109, board action against Anthony Blasi. And if you plan to testify, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Once again, we provide the board a handout that summarizes the chronology up to this point. The operator is here to request a permit reinstate.
And have all the requirements been met for that?
Yes.
Okay.
So, have the date and
Good morning. I'm Anthony Blassie, operator of the pit. I was in Arizona at the time, but when this came up due, and I had a secretary that was supposed to be taking care of this, and obviously it didn't happen. So when I got notified of it, we went ahead and paid the dues and did the civil penalties and everything. Asking if you guys could reinstate my permit.
Okay. So are you currently living in Colorado now?
Yes.
Okay. And your address and everything is current with the division, so any communication will be rapid and okay.
I was just down there for 3 months for cancer treatments.
Okay.
It's over with now, so I'm back.
Okay. I guess the question is that, these violations over, there are several here over failure to submit reports, maps, and fees. But you're comfortable with what's required now moving forward and you understand that requirement. Okay. Do we have questions for the operator or division? Okay, thank you both. I think we'll close testimony and talk this through. Thanks.
I'll make a motion. With permit number M-2002-109, that we grant the operator's request to reinstate the reclamation permit for the purpose of allowing the operator to complete reclamation of the site.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item on the agenda is file number M-2018-052, enforcement hearing with Stephen Hunter. Thank you. Thank you. And if you plan to testify, could you please stand and raise your right hand? And do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that the restroom and maybe I have seen them both today.
Okay.
I just want to give them the fair opportunity to hear the presentation.
Great.
Maybe just a 5-minute recess
That
break.
sounds great. Yeah.
Get back here. I know that.
Sure. Okay, great. Yeah, let's start up again, I guess. All right, great. Let's get started again. And if you could please stand if you plan to testify. Thank you. And raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth? Thank you.
Okay, my name is Eric Scott, representing the division in this matter. This is consideration of a violation for failure to first obtain a reclamation permit from the Mine Land Board or office before engaging in a new mining operation. This is file M 2018-052. On October 1st, DRMS Minerals received a call from Summit County's County Planning Director stating that they had received a complaint of possible unpermitted mining activity on the Hunter property located at 510 Bearing Tree Road near Barton Ridge, Colorado. On October 4th, 2018, we accompanied the Summit County Planning Director, Don Reimer, and the Chief Building Official, Scott Hoffman, and met with the property owner, Stephen Hunter, at the site. They did an inspection, and during that inspection, DRMS observed 3 unpermitted structures that Mr. Hunter had constructed to contain tools, processing and support equipment, and an active excavation. We also observed evidence of on-site material processing using multiple screening, shaker tables, and a sluice constructed by Mr. Hunter, and an active excavation approximately 20 feet across by 15 feet deep under the largest structure, total surface disturbance of less than an acre. And then we also observed numerous bags of excavated and processed material staged on site. On October 24th, 2018, DRMS mailed the operator a copy of the inspection report and an RTB letter citing a possible violation of CRS 34-32-109, parent 1, for failure to obtain a reclamation permit prior to engaging in a new mining operation. And just for review, as defined by the minerals rules and regulations for hard rock, metal, and designated mining operations, mining operation means the development or extraction of a mineral from its natural occurrence on affected land. The term includes but is not limited to open mining, in situ beach mining, surface operations, and the disposal of refuse from underground mining, in situ mining, and in situ beach mining. The term also includes the following operations on affected lands: transportation, concentrating, milling, evaporation, and other processing. And using that definition, DRMS has determined that the excavation on-site, in combination with the on-site screening and sluice and on-site placement of bagged and excavated processed materials, constitutes mining activity. And then we'll start with an overview of the area. What you're looking at is the town of Breckenridge with Highway 9 running north and south there. The black and yellow squares highlight the Hunter residence and the location of the unpermitted excavation. We'll zoom in a little bit. Following slide is a closer view of the area in question here. We have the residence, 2 unpermitted structures at this location, and the 3rd unpermitted structure overlying the excavation at the end of this footpath that's visible in this photo. So we'll start our photo tour here with the first structure that you would reach when moving from north to south along this footpath. We can see this structure, which contained various pieces, parts, support equipment. Also has been provided power for lighting. We have some, I believe, probably a screen table under construction here in front of this building. See in the background of this photo, the next structure we'll be moving on to here. This would be the second structure, where we have hand tools for excavation. We have a motorized screening table. We have a sluice that we'll look at a little more detail that's hidden by the tools here. You can see in the lower right-hand photo the 2 garbage can water storage reservoirs with piping and hoses. Also wired for lights and power. Here we have a closer view of the motorized screening table, motor, power. You also see here the power panel with the pumps clearly labeled above the first two switches. And as we move through this building, on the other side of the screening table is the sluice. We've got a good partial view of here. This would be the end of the sluice with the catch basin. And as we progress from north to south here from the second structure, we go down the footpath and get to the last unpermitted structure. And this is looking pretty much south from the trail at the structure. If you turn to the left, turn to the left, you'd see this, some bag material, a little bit of a cleared area here. Turn to the right, you'll see more of the same. And as we progress into the structure, we come to another sifting table, another sorting table, obviously recently utilized here based on the material on top in the bag and the pile of material underneath. Passing by that, we turn to the left, look back into the structure, and you can see the bags of material that have been used primarily, I think, as retaining blocks here. Sediment control. Looking into the structure itself, we see a platform that's been constructed over the excavation, and you can see in this platform there's an opening with, I guess you'd call it a homemade head frame of sorts, with a powered winch. See the power here. It drops a cable down into the excavation, and if you'll notice the platform here, you can use that as a reference in the next photo. You can see the platform at the top of this photo looking down into the excavation, and these are the steps that are used to get to the bottom of the excavation. You can see the bag at the bottom of the excavation here. Here we are in the excavation. Clearly a work in progress. Got a bag partially full of material, power to the winch that we'll look at in the next photo, which is being utilized to move the filled bags up to the platform again for removal. So, as I previously stated, according to the definition of mining and the activities that we've observed on site, the division recommends that the board find a violation of CRS 34-32-109, or failure to first obtain a reclamation permit from the Mine Land Board or office before engaging in a new mining operation. We recommend the corrective action of submittal of a reclamation only 110-1 permit application, complete for filing purposes within 90 days of the mailing date of the signed board order, and to obtain DRMS approval of the permit within statutory deadlines. Permit application shall address at a minimum a plan for the reclamation of all affected areas impacted by mining activity, and bringing the 3 associated structures either into compliance with local zoning and building regulations or removing them from the property. And also the issuance of a cease and desist order. The division would ask that a cease and desist order be issued in accordance with CRS 34-32-123, parent 1, prohibiting any further mining activities except those activities approved by the division in writing as necessary to prevent further damage to offsite areas or to protect public health and safety until corrective actions have been resolved to the satisfaction of the division. And just as, for civil penalties pursuant to CRS 34-32-123, parent 3, assess a civil penalty of not less than $50 per day, no more than $200 per day for each day of the violation, not to exceed 60 days. In this instance, 60 days of penalty may be assessed from the date of the inspection to the date of today's hearing, giving a civil penalty range of $3,000 to $12,000. Staff recommends that the board would assess a total civil penalty in the amount of $5,000, with $2,500 of that suspended if the operator complies with the corrective action. Payment of the unsuspended civil penalties, $2,500, is due within 30 days of the mailing date of the board order, and failure to pay the unsuspended penalty by the date due shall result in the matter being turned over to state collection. And just as some additional information for the board, we have been in close contact with Summit County, Don Reimer, the Summit County Planning Director, on this matter. And Summit County reported this issue to the division, and their representative also accompanied us on the inspection. They issued a corrective action letter to Mr. Hunter on October 16th, 2018, through a notice of violation. Their corrective actions are actually very similar to what the division would ask, very similar to what would be required in a reclamation-only permit for the site, which would be to bring the buildings up to code or remove them and obtain a grading permit by November 30th to regrade and revegetate the state area. Given that, subsequent to issuing the RTB letter on October 24th, and after discussions with Summit County, DRMS discussed with Mr. Hunter the possibility of withdrawing these enforcement actions if he were to come into compliance with the Summit County corrective actions by November 30th, the corrective action date given by the county. In a phone conversation with Mr. Reimer of Summit County on November 21st, DRMS was informed that he had not approached the county to achieve compliance. This was restated again in an email from Mr. Reimer to DRMS on December 5th. And due to Mr. Hunter's non-compliance with the county's corrective action requirements to that time, Summit County supported the division's recommendation that the MLRB order Mr. Hunter to obtain a reclamation-only permit for this site. That ends the division's presentation at this time. So if there's any questions.
I guess my question is, I don't understand how complying with Summit County's zoning regulations makes it not a mine.
It's not that so much. We're not trying to delegate our enforcement to Summit County, but in light that we were essentially asking for the same thing, Mr. Hunter time to comply with Summit County's requirements before we pursue additional enforcement action with essentially the same corrective actions, and also additional permitting requirements and civil penalties.
Well, maybe I didn't get the Summit County stuff you're talking about.
And Board Member Brubaker, I would agree the corrective action requirements required by the county and what would be required by the state are separate. There's dual jurisdiction, there's dual authority on these issues. I think it was the enforcement discretion and the goodness of the division to Mr. Hunter to allow him to clean this up quickly and cooperate with the county, and he did not, and that's why we're here today.
The county's notice of violation.
I have that. I just don't see where it says take down all the structures and fill the holes back in. The county's correct.
And the deadline for that was November 30th.
November 30th was the deadline given to grading.
To get a permit, okay. Okay.
Either bring the structure, so we can have them essentially, and
Yeah.
the time that we required to.
Are they willing to extend that deadline?
November 30th.
Mhm.
I'm not sure at this point what their process.
Okay. Okay.
As part to answer your question, I mean, there still will likely be the grading permit requirement.
Yeah.
But I mean, given the conditions there now, I mean, it's not going to happen till June. And that's part of why we're here today is given the nature of this operation, they have to be under some sort of someone's jurisdiction and authority.
Right.
That's why we're here today again.
I have some other questions about the site. Did you notice any discharging water from the site? You mentioned some pumps. Okay.
No, it would appear the water is being captured and contained and possibly recycled through the sluice.
Okay.
There was no discharge observed.
All right. And then all of the material that's being processed or sorted, or however we want to term that, is being put into those sandbags.
It would appear
not left on site.
Well, the bags are then utilized on site.
Correct. But it's not just piled on site. It's not left uncontained on site. I'm asking about tailings piles.
Oh, no, we didn't observe any large tailings piles or anything of that nature.
Thank you.
I think most of the material has been bagged and contained and utilized as retaining structures and other sorts of things on site there.
Okay. And the depth of that excavation?
My estimate at the time was approximately 15 feet. It's not overly deep, but yeah, it's in progress. So.
Okay. And then maybe a question for the operator too, but do you know if that entire trail and all of the, I guess if that entire trail is on private property as well? Okay.
What's the approximate distance on the trail from one unit to the other? What's the approximate distance? It's hard to tell from that.
The scale did get a little clipped here. From this hash mark to the edge of the photo is approximately 500 feet. So 1,500, 2,000 feet, probably from beginning to end.
Probably less than a half mile.
I would say yes. But it's primarily just a footpath between the structures and the house.
Do we know if it's zoned residential there?
It is residential zoning, yes. That was, and perhaps they can speak to this in more detail, but that was part of the county's notice of violation was noncompliance with zoning.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, all of you. My name is Dan Teodoro with Timberline Law in Breckenridge on behalf of Mr. Hunter. So what we'd like to do here, our intention since we've been involved in this is to rectify whatever the concerns are to come in compliance. Mr. Hunter first consulted me regarding the county enforcement matters. I actually worked for the county attorney's office for 12 and a half years dealing with code enforcement matters. Our first conversation was regarding the notion that we had to come into compliance. I did contact the county attorney on this, who was kind of handling this because there's 3 different departments involved. And we even talked about that November 30th date. And they obviously they have neither filed an enforcement action nor have they taken any other sort of action that would contradict this notion. But what we talked about is having some time to correct this. As a little bit of clarification, in Summit County, especially this year, fortunately, really from October on, there's no grading or excavation that can be done, no remediation or revegetation that can be done. Not a lot that can be done because we have quite a bit of snow and it's continued straight through. So we've addressed this with the county beforehand, and we've been working with the county. I spoke with the county engineer regarding the whole issue of grading and excavation, which typically a grading and excavation permit is for mechanized grading, which means something done by any sort of machinery. And here it's been acknowledged by everybody this has all been done by hand, which is usually outside of the auspice of those permits. So we are still working with them to comply with all these matters. The sheds in question, the first 2 sheds in question, which are about a quarter mile away or a little more than a quarter mile away from the mine pit. The reason one doesn't comply is because it's just a little too high in height. In Summit County, you're allowed to have a shed of 200 feet or less square feet as a permitted use. This is not a residential zoning. This is A1 zoning. On A1 zoning, mining is allowed as a conditional use permit as well. That said, Mr. Hunter's intention was never to, nor did he ever actually mine the site. Never engaged in any sort of extraction, nor any sort of development. There is a trail to this pit. This pit is there since 1883 approximately. So that pit has always been there. It's a long-standing pit. The trail was there before he purchased the property. He has certainly had some activity over there. He's built a shelter over that pit. He's gone down to the pit. Absolutely, we're not suggesting anything to the contrary. There was no intention to extract any mineral. He was pulling some shale out of there. He didn't dig down. He didn't drill down. He didn't use any equipment or machinery. There's no running water at that site. There's no connected electricity at that site. There's one tiny little solar battery for that winch, and that's about it. And the reason why I bring this up is not to contest the notion that there is a matter of concern here, as the pictures show, and as we've discussed from the first time we sat down. There's a matter of concern from the county, which is really sort of extraneous to this whole thing. But regardless of that fact, we are happy to agree with the cease and desist order. We are happy to agree with the direction to apply for whatever kind of permits appropriate. Hopefully you got our submission materials where, from everything we can see, it seems to be, if it's anything, it fits more along the lines of prospecting. But we'll take the guidance of the department and move forward with whatever permit application he needs to. He wasn't aware that he needed to. There was no intention to mine, and we're fine with the cease and desist order because there's no intention to mine in the future. Moreover, we've made it abundantly clear with the county that we're going to work on correcting all the issues that are in place there. Those issues, some of those are actually quite minor, especially when you consider the scope and extent of the statutes that are at play here, where we talk about a limited operation mine is something that can reach and that's only limited operation, is something that can reach as large as 10 acres in size and 70,000 tons a year, I believe. There hasn't been a pound of any actual mineral that's been mined for in this site extracted from there. There's been shale and rock extracted from there. Any substance is a mineral, I guess. But the bottom line is whatever has been done there will be corrected and will be ceased. We want to make that clear. I guess our big concern here is just the notion of a fine. We're very appreciative, and the state's been very cooperative with us in terms of trying to address this. We agree with the cease and desist order. We agree with everything. What we'd request is we're fine with the suspended fine. We'd ask that the actual fine to be levied right now be somewhat de minimis, and more of that fine be suspended, so we can show you, our stated intentions to correct them and rectify everything that's gone on there. With the county zoning code, which is completely different, as well as with the state, and the fact that whatever was that activity, and whatever the activities were there, which were obviously enough of a context to generate a fair amount of concern, we see where that comes from. Cease and get corrected, but in the interim, we feel that a fine is not a fine of any significance really isn't appropriate here for Mr. Hunter, because he was not mining. He did not extract any minerals. In terms of development, there's no access road or anything of that nature that's been brought here, or anything that goes beyond prospecting to something where you're actively supporting the extraction of minerals, which is the definition of development and the definition of a mining operation here. So As a point of clarification, the pit was existing. We went too far in terms of the sandbags that you see there, or the filler bags that are there absolutely for erosion control. But we have already contacted the county building department, the county engineering department, the county attorney's office in an effort to resolve all of these matters and come into compliance with the county. And we want to do so with the state as well. While there's not a direct nexus, that is absolutely our intention. Unfortunately, given the time of year, we do need time to be able to work that through. We believe that over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks, and it's being the holidays too, so just say the course of the next month, we should have a full remediation plan with the county. We'll be glad to share that with the state immediately upon dialing that in. And whatever permit or whatever materials need to be submitted to the state, we were absolutely committed to that as well. We would just ask that the fine be suspended so we can show the compliance, because there was never an intention to not comply and there was never an intention to mod.
My turn now, huh? I know the pictures look bad. Oh, I'm Steve Hunter. I'm the owner of the property. I bought the property 20 years ago, and I've had my house on there for 14 years. I was hit with pine beetles and lost 5,000 lodge poles. So I've been trying to take them out over the years. I've probably taken out over 500 myself. I do it in the winter, and I cut them into 16-foot lengths, drag them out on a sled. Well, this particular spot had just lodge poles just growing crazy out of it. And I had no idea what it was. I had no idea that there was any kind of mining operation ever on my property. It's never been in a history book ever. I've read like every one over and over and over. Never mentioned anywhere. I had no idea. So as I started cutting all these lodge poles out, I've started to find artifacts and also timbers in there. So after that, I started researching the property, and I discovered that this mine it was actually discovered in 1869. And I have right here from my patent document a full map of all the excavations that were done. This is from 1883. So, you know, my main interest in this property was for artifacts. Every single bag you see that's sandbagged there was from areas, and I know you can't see this, but there's a pile of debris that the 1860 miners threw down the hill. And I've actually cleared up down to natural ground big parts of that. And what I do is I take 5-gallon buckets up, I run it through that screen that you saw that was at the actual pit site. It separates it into rock and dirt, and then I pull artifacts out of the rock stuff because I can't use my metal detector on it because there's too much iron in the rock. So that was the main thing I've done on the property over the last, since I discovered that it was a historic property. It's been about 10 years. When you look at the buildings, you know, I have the right to build as many buildings as I want, as long as they're under 200 square feet and under 8 feet tall. So at the actual mine site, which is a quarter of a mile from where you saw that sluice, that's actually 2 buildings. The first one I built was just for shelter for me and my dog, as I cut all the trees from all the dead standing trees from that area. And then the second building was just a cover. It was my third cover. And the reason I wanted to cover it was because state law requires me to, as I understand it. So the first cover I built over it was flat, and water just pours in this thing. And it develops this huge ice layer, and I didn't think it was safe for wildlife. And so then I put another slanted cover over it, and that was even worse because you can't even walk on it because of the slope. So I'm sorry I'm taking up so much of your time, but the big building was my last cover. And so that cover actually works. I'm the first person in 44 million years that's been able to keep drainage from coming down into this thing. So the sandbag that was in the pit, when I finished cutting the trees, it was down 18 feet. And I know because this is the last root I cut out right here. It was filled with hundreds of, I mean, if not thousands of these amazing lodgepole roots. So I cut that one from 18 feet in this hole. So because of the ice buildup on the lodgepoles were kind of holding it all together. And when I took them out, the ice buildup caused the thing to start caving in on itself. So now it's 14 feet deep, and it buried a bunch of lights that I had down there that I was illuminating on this vein. And the reason that I was doing that is because this vein it's amazing. It's historically and geologically important. I'm 99% sure it's the first carbonate formation ever discovered in the Rockies. It's got 3 different modes of enrichment. It's never been touched because the guy who found it in 1869, he was looking for a silver mine, and this was gold. And so he moved on and didn't process this actual vein. So I've never touched the vein in 10 years. I've left it exactly as it is. I do have lights on it so I can look at it. And so I've been trying to protect it all this time because I'd like to, I think it's important for academics I mean, these types of veins, it's a Gaussian formation that were incredibly rich in, should I cut it up?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. So I've been trying to protect this vein over all this time, and all those bags are just the material that I've taken from the pile they created and taken artifacts out of. And okay.
And just for clarification.
Yeah.
So we have discussed the
Oh.
notion of taking corrective action.
Absolutely. I'm willing to do anything to correct. I'm willing to cease whatever anyone wants me to cease. Also, I just want to say one more thing. I've been a hobbyist, just a recreational kind of, prospector kind of guy my whole life. And the actual sluice and everything is a quarter of a mile away from the pit. I actually use that to process material from creeks and stuff around Breckenridge. That's been my hobby for 20 years. So I know it all looks connected and everything, but it was built over a period, like I said, of 14 years. And, story.
Questions, comments?
I understand it. You don't have any problem with staff recommendation other than the amount of the fund.
Yes.
How much time do you need?
So Summit County being Summit County, it's kind of hard to pinpoint. We've had some springs where things are cleared up by April. Sometimes it's late June, but I think if we said something like July 1st, that should give us ample time to pull the corrective action. The biggest one being some of the grading and regrading until the ground, until the frost is gone, and then the mud is gone, and then the dirt gets to the point where you can do some of that stuff. In terms of the building violations, we have already talked with the county on that. Those buildings will either be demolished or corrected. The ones too high, small enough, and stuff like that. So those should be done well before July 1st. But in terms of grading that part, probably just take the winter's thaw or the summer's thaw whenever that may be.
What's your elevation range at the site?
It's 9,800 feet.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The only timing in the staff recommendation is the 90 day. That's just to get the permit.
And we are, just to clarify too, whatever permit is most appropriate, because we don't want to mine, we can make that clear, but we'll work with the state on that. It's a prospecting permit, or if it's the grade 1 permit, whatever it is, we're happy to work through that, to bond for that, take all those other actions that we need to take.
You have their recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, because it's a 110, one reclamation on there.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? Okay. So thank you very much. We'll close testimony. Kind of into deliberations here. It sounds like we have a willing operator who's ready to work with these recommendations, willing to work with the county, but asking for the adjustment on the fine. What would you like to do, board?
I guess I'm okay with reducing that unsuspended portion as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
To say $500, from 25 to $500.
Yeah.
All right with me.
That work?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think having worked with Summit County in the past, you're gonna be paying a lot in their permit fees as well. So I think 500 would be more appropriate.
I move we find a violation in accordance with CRS 34-32-109, Pren 1 for failure to first obtain a reclamation permit from the Mine Land Reclamation Board or office before engaging in a new mining operation as required. Corrective actions: submit to DRMS a 110-1 reclamation-only permit application complete for filing purposes within 90 days of the mailing date of the signed MLRB order, and obtain approval of the application within statutory guidelines. Permit application shall include, at a minimum, a plan for reclamation of all affected areas impacted by the mining activity and bringing the 3 associated structures into compliance with local zoning and building regulations, or removing them from the property. Issue a cease and desist order in accordance with CRS 34-32-123, Pren 1, prohibiting any further mining activities except those activities approved by the division in writing as necessary to prevent further damage to offsite areas or to protect public health and safety until corrective actions have been resolved to the satisfaction of the division. And I recommend, or I move that we assess a civil penalty of $5,000 with all but $500 suspended if the operator complies with corrective action by the deadline specified. This is all in relation to file M2018-152.
Okay. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Huh?
I don't think we have any, do we have any public comment today? I think so. Okay. And looks like no executive session either. Okay. So with that, I think we're drawing to a close for our December meeting. Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays.